It's another word for Mars.
What is
Cairo.
going on with that?
Yeah. That is a subject which Richard is probably better suited to talk about than I, because I really haven't looked at Mars over and above the general kind of stuff he talks about. But yeah, I totally believe for myself that Mars is inhabited. And I do believe that there's probably humans like us there. What was his name? Quite a long time ago, I had a long conversation in Mesa, Arizona with Virgil Armstrong Postlethwaite. Virgil Armstrong and I sat in a restaurant in Mesa, Arizona many years ago and talked about the people who were on Mars. And Virgil was the guy, from what I gather, was the man who came up with the idea. He was a military CIA operative, and he's the guy that came up with the idea for Green Berets. That was his idea, Green Beret, and he worked with the CIA. And so I loved sitting and talking with Virgil Armstrong. But he brought out about how, in that conversation, how there were many thousands of people or more like us, humans like us, on Mars at that time. And I wouldn't have been surprised.
What year was this that you were talking about?
This was probably 50, that was probably 80, mid-80s.
Amazing.
I would say 85, 86, 87, something like that.
Okay, well that does dovetail also with our experience with our witness Henry Deacon. Arthur Neumann is his real name. He's come out under that name recently and said he's been to Mars. So I'm wondering if you have any information that's come to you about jump gates, about going between planets.
Well, yes and no. The only thing I have of any value was someone else's work. I sat and talked with him. And he is a very, very knowledgeable, very legitimately, but he worked for the United States Naval Observatory. He was in charge of the Naval Observatory, and he just passed away just recently. But his website is so extraordinary. The stuff he's got, the stuff he has on that website, pictures of strange things found on Mars. And they're not nebulous things, they're in your face. I mean, those tubes, plexiglass tubes.
Yes,
and lights in those tubes. There's just an enormous amount of stuff he has on his website.
Well, our attention was drawn to that by Henry Deacon as well, to those tubes, which is a fascinating.
Yeah, I always say I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. If there's any value in my person and my work, it is, I would say this, that I have been privileged to be in the company of extraordinary people doing extraordinary work. And I have been privileged to sit in their company and be accepted by them and be able to learn things behind the scenes that other people will never be privy to hear.
Isn't it true, though, that you were told that you have a mission that is going to come to the fore late in life, and that you might actually be there now? Do you want to tell that story at all?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mentioned this, I think, on Coast to Coast once, but it was very quickie because George wants to hear all the stories as long as it's within a minute and a half. But
we have longer than that.
Yeah, but when I was 19, I ended up in Los Angeles at 19 years old with $7 in my pocket, incidentally. I had no idea where I was going, where I was. I ended up in Los Angeles on a Friday night with $7 in my pocket. And, you know, a stupid kid, but I lived through it. But later on, a couple months later, after I got a job and things were working out for me, I was in North Hollywood one morning, on a weekend morning, and I went into a restaurant, and the place was crowded, and there was only one seat available, and that was at the counter. So I sat at the counter, and there was a young girl sitting next to me, so we started talking. A come to find out, she only lived about 2 blocks from me, and I only lived about 2 blocks from town. So she had walked downtown, I had also. So we started hanging out together. I'd meet her downtown, we'd hang out together. And this is back in '59, and I was 19 years old. And so when we would walk home, I lived 2 blocks closer, so she had 2 blocks further to go. So I never knew exactly where she lived, but she knew where I lived. One night she came over to my place and said, "My dad wants to see you. He wants to talk to you." And of course that put me on alert. I said, "I don't want to talk to your dad, right?" And she said, "No, my father is a very important and interesting man. He wants to talk to you. He's got something to tell you." So that sounded interesting, so I went with her. And when we walked up to the house, which was only a couple blocks away, we walked up to the house. Just by chance, he happened to be coming out of the house. And the moment I saw him, I got an incredible feeling came over me of some kind of a euphoric, strange, wonderful feeling that I got being in his presence. It was as if I were in the presence of a great prophet or some spiritual man. I felt it, and I loved the feeling. I mean, I can't describe it, but I loved the feeling. It was an otherworld feeling. And I noticed that he was very much in control of himself. He knew exactly what he was doing. So he motioned for us to come in. We went in, and we sat, the girls sat on the floor. The fireplace, they sat on the floor. He sat on one end of the sofa. I sat on the other end of the sofa. The wife was in the kitchen. I never did see her that whole night. And so we were talking, and he was, you know, he was asking me how I like living in California, and do you have a job, and how do you like your job, and just small talk. And I was beginning to feel a little, the apprehension was going away. I was beginning to feel a little bit better being in his company. But I knew there was something about this guy that wasn't right. But I loved the feeling. And I'm 19 years old, so I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm just talking to this guy who's dazzling me with his presence of mind and the presence he presented. And so we're talking about all kinds of things. And then when he felt that I was sufficiently at ease, he said to me very nonchalantly, he said, "Remember when you were 8 years old back in Florida and your father built a new back porch and your uncle helped him, and remember your dad used green lumber that smelled funny and he built a new back porch? You remember that?" And tears started to come to my eyes. And I didn't want to show tears in front of my girlfriend, but he was scaring me because he was right. And he knew it. And he said to me, "Well, did that happen or didn't it?" And I said, "Yes, that happened." And he said, "Also, one night when you were in bed, you got out of bed and you went out on the back porch. And you were looking at the moon, and the moon was full. You remember that?" And I said, "Yes, I remember that." And he said, "And you were picking the wood because it smelled funny. It was green lumber, it smelled funny. And you were picking it with your finger. Remember how you picked a piece of it and you were smelling it and tasting it?" And he said, "Remember doing that?" And now I'm really scared because it's frightening to me. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, did you do that or didn't you?" I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Well, how would I know that? How would I know what you did?" And I said, "I don't know how you know." And he said, "I know because we were there. You just didn't see us, but we were there watching you." And I thought, well, and he said, well, because he could tell I was not buying, and he said, was I correct in what I said? "Yeah, well, how would I know if I wasn't there?" And he said, "We were there." And I said, "Who was we?" He said, "That's not important right now. What's important for you to know is that you're in California because we brought you here. We brought you here to Los Angeles." And I said, "You brought me here?" He said, "Yeah, why are you here?" I said, "I don't know why I'm here. I just had to come to Los Angeles." He said, "That's right. We brought you here." He said, "Because what did you say to God? You talked to God that night. The night you sat on the porch, you said something to God. What did you say?" And I just sat and looked at him. He said, I'll tell you what you said. You said you asked God to let you do something important with your life. You wanted to do something of value and importance with your life. And that was about 8 or 9 years old, right? I said, yes, that's what I said. And he said, well, then we're going to give you an opportunity to do something with your life then, because you did ask. And I'm still amazed listening to him. And he said, what we have for you to do will not happen until the later part of your life. And I'm not going to go into it right now, he said. I'm not going to go into explain it to you now. However, when the time comes for you to do what we have brought you here to do, you will know what you have to do. By that time, you will be sufficiently knowledgeable on who you are and what you're doing and where you're going. And he said, all you need to know now is that we brought you here and that we will protect you wherever it is that we put you. And I asked him, I said, I still don't understand what you're saying. And he said, you don't need to, but one day you will understand. And he said, so I'm here to start you on your journey. He said, I have a book I'm going to give you, and I want you to read the book, and that will begin your journey. And he pulls it off the shelf and gives it to me. And today you can still get that book in bookstores anywhere. It's called The Complete Works of Charles Fort. F-O-R-T. Even in England, there's a Fortean society dedicated to the work of Charles Fort. Fascinating book. It's a monumental work. Very thick book. Complete Works of Charles Fort. And he opened the book indiscriminately, just put his hand on the page, because it's a very thick book, and he opens the page and he reads a paragraph. He just opens the page and reads a paragraph. He knew exactly what he was doing, precisely what he was doing. I didn't know because it looked like he just indiscriminately opened it. And he read a paragraph that just blew me away. I was knocked out by what he just read. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And he said, oh yeah, the book is filled with that kind of thing. Let me read another one. And he opened it up again and just indiscriminately read something. Not indiscriminately. He knew what he was doing. I'm sure that he knew how to get your particular attention. What would be very interesting to you, I may not even see. But he knew how to play on my emotions. And he read about 3 little paragraphs, one after the other. And each one, to me, was absolutely mind-blowing. And I was fascinated with him, with my new girlfriend, and with this book. And then he said to me, he said, you've always been interested in UFOs and otherworldly things, right? And I said, yes, I have. He said, would you like to see some UFOs up close tonight? And I said, I'd love to. He said, well, come on, I can do that for you. And so I got up with him and the 2 girls, my girlfriend and her sister. Now the 4 of us come out in the yard. It's about maybe midnight in North Hollywood, 1959. And he looks up into the sky and starts inaudibly talking. His mouth is moving as if he's talking to somebody, but nothing, you can't hear him. And as I'm watching him standing there talking to the stars, I look over at my girlfriend and she's looking at me. And the look on her face was like, yeah, this is my father, that's him. I told you it was strange, didn't I? That kind of thing. And her sister was looking at me, and I could tell what she was doing. She was trying to figure out, how is he taking this? How is he, what's going on in my mind, what the little one was thinking? Because she's seen this before. She wants to see how I'm going to react to this. And so he said, and then he looks at me and he said, they said that they will be coming from Griffith Park in just a minute. There'll be 3 of them. And they'll be coming from Griffith Park area. They're going north, and they said that they'll be here in a minute for you. And I said, who's they? He said, you'll see. And within a couple of minutes, 3 beautiful disc-shaped things, glowing, very faintly glowing, came over with no sound whatsoever, in a triangle formation, came over and stopped right above our head and stopped. And when they did, you could see they were disc shaped, and it looked and appeared like it was like a pie cut in 6 or 8 slices, and each slice was a different color. And what I remember distinctly is each color was like laser color, vibrant orange, vibrant pink, very vibrant colors, 6 or 8 colors on each one, and they were circulating. Not so fast as to blend the color, but circulating. And they were beautiful. And they were about the size that the full moon appears. So they're not little lights, full moon size, 3. And I'm standing there looking at these gorgeous, beautiful, vibrant color things spinning in colors and no sound. And I was absolutely mesmerized. I was enthralled by seeing this gorgeous, beautiful display. And I looked at him, and he's looking at me. And he says, "They're pretty, aren't they?" And I said, "Yes, they're beautiful." And then he looks up and talks to me. He said, "They told me to tell you that they're going now, but they'll see you later." And they did. They started moving, and they went out north. And afterwards, we went back in, and I said, "What did I just see tonight?" And he said, "That was us. We've been here for a long time. You just didn't know it." And he said, "We picked you a long time ago when you were a small child. We have something for you to do." And I said, I'm not understanding exactly. He said, "You don't have to. We will let you know what it is you're supposed to do later on in life." He said, "But just go on with your life. Don't worry about it. Whatever you're supposed to learn, we'll see to it that you learn. And when it is time for you to do what we have for you to do, you'll know. We'll let you know." And after that, I would go over there on the weekends to visit him and the mother and the 2 girls. And we would go out to the desert sometimes and go way out in the desert. And the girls with their mother would go for a walk, and he and I would walk in the desert. And he would tell me about all the different alien life forms that are out there, where they have come from, the ones that are here. And he told me, "You have enemies here. You have some very powerful enemies here from other places that have come, and they know who you are, and they know what you're going to do. So just be careful in your life, but we'll protect you." I didn't know what he was talking about. And then one day I went over to the house one morning, and the house was totally open, and they're gone. Everything was packed and gone, and the girl never told me she was leaving. They never come to tell me anything. They were just gone. Now that I look back on that experience, I feel very secure in saying that he knew what he was doing. He said, "I'm starting you on your journey," and he did. But after that was done, then he moves on.
Do you believe that you're at that place, that juncture where he was talking about you're going to know? Has another message come recently, or do you feel that you're right on the cusp of something?
I feel I'm on the beginning of something, and I'm still not sure what all of this means. I'm not sure what it means. All I know is that I have some valuable stuff that's going to really knock people out when they see it, but I don't understand it fully yet. And I've talked with Zechariah about it. I've talked with many other speakers and people that are in the speaking circuit that are knowledgeable in the subject. But my gut feeling, and incidentally gut, G-U-T, is simply God in Scandinavian. You know, God is English, dog spelled backwards. But God in, I think it's Sweden and Scandinavian countries is spelled G-U-T. So when you say you got a gut feeling, that's God in Scandinavian. So, but my gut feeling is that I don't know the full picture yet. But I'm getting there now. After 48 years, I now know that my 48 years of study, day in and day out, researching, reading, staying in libraries, was for a reason. So that when the time would come, I would at least be sufficiently educated in this dark subject, which I'm talking about. At least I've got some background in it now, to be able to understand the significance of it. And I think it's really frightening to me. It actually is still rather frightening, because being human and watching the world where it's going, and I already know the symbols, the words, the terms. I already know the history of the secret societies and the movements of the bankers. I've sat and talked with all kinds of people around the world. With Hakim, my dear friend Hakim, the Camelot priest in Egypt. And we sat out by the pyramids at night and talked about the ancient Camelot priesthood. And I was blessed in the pyramid. Hakim blessed me in the king's chamber, laid in the sarcophagus, and he did a whole prayer ritual over me. And I sat, like I said, for hours and talked with him in private about my things that have happened to me. So I am totally convinced that there's nothing special about me, but I have been given the opportunity to be in the company of fascinating people, to learn monstrously fascinating things, and ultimately I think that there is something for me to do. I'm just not sure yet what it is.
Do you happen to have an idea what race this man was from? Do you have a planet? Do you have any idea? In other words, do you think he was Anunnaki? Do you think he was Nordic? Do you think he was Pleiadian? Do you have any idea?
No, not really. Because he appeared to be an extraordinarily ordinary looking guy. Just an ordinary guy you would meet. But when I was in his presence, it was monstrous, the feeling. I knew this is not a normal man.
Did his children have a different aura or a different feeling about them?
No. No, they seemed to be very ordinary. The mother.
But didn't you tell me just recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were out in the desert.
Yeah.
And you had something happen out there.
Oh,
very
yeah.
recently.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No. But that's a different story.
Well, is it completely different? Is it possible that there was some kind of...
Well, no, you're right. You're right. There could very well be some kind of a connection with what happened to me just a few years ago, and that original incident back in 1959. Yes, it's very, very possible. That was another extraordinary experience. I've had 36 what I call peak experiences. I mean, monstrous experiences. That was merely one. But yes, I've had some very interesting and emotionally drenching experiences out on the deserts of Nevada. One thing I will tell you, which is just my opinion, I am totally convinced for myself that at Area 51, that base we call Area 51, there is no doubt in my mind that there is extraterrestrial life forms there. No doubt in my mind about it at all, because of what I have personally seen and experienced when I was at Rachel. I've had too many strange things happen to me that were otherworldly, in your face, like one-on-one. And so there's no doubt in my mind that what I experienced out there, we had an alien come in the mobile home. My friend Paul Tice and my lady friend from Hawaii, Ivy, all three of us, an alien came in the bedroom. So there's no doubt in my mind, there's something really off the wall going on out there at Area 51 that we are not aware of. But I've had many otherworld experiences out there, not just, I can't stand it when people say that this is all high technology of of our government. No, I don't buy that for a minute. What I've seen with my own eyes, I don't buy it for a minute. If it has anything to do with our government, then what I have actually witnessed with my own eyes, if it has to do with U.S. government, then that means that the U.S. government is in league with extraterrestrials, because what I saw is extraterrestrial in origin. So, and what I've experienced.
Thank you for that. That's very, very valuable to hear you say that. Can you talk about the possibility of what these humans that are being created, what their destiny might be? In other words, you say they might not have feelings, et cetera, et cetera. And do you feel that perhaps, this is working in with your sort of destiny that they were talking about, because these subjects we're talking about right here and now. I actually went to Egypt with you and William Henry in that group. I did have a short interview with you at that time. You weren't willing to talk about that then. I think that now you're much more willing. This message that you have seems to be culminating in this, in what you're saying, in this symbol that you know we talked about at the beginning of this interview. Is it possible that this is going to be the message, the unfolding of what you know?
I think my feeling is that the reason why I'm here doing what I'm doing is because of this mutation which is being foisted on the human race. It's being forced on the human race, this change that the masters of the universe, so to speak, have in mind for the human race is being foisted on us. And I believe, again, just by opinion, that that's my part in this cosmic scheme or this cosmic play, is to call people back to their humanity and let them know you're being led down the garden path into something you don't know what's coming. You had better get back to your roots of being human and start re-establishing your humanity, because the human race is losing its humanity. The way we were designed by the original creators was a beautiful thing. I mean, when you look at children and little animals, you have to know that whoever designed us designed humans and life forms to be beautiful, to be charming, to be a beautiful thing, to live in a beautiful world with children and gorgeous and beautiful things which uplift the spirit. But I am totally convinced that there is now on the earth, again, for a lack of a better term, alien presence, which are the enemies of the human race. And they are obviously enemies of whoever the original creators of us, because of the things I've been told, that the people or the entities who created us, the gods who created us, have enemies out there in the universe. And they have come here to see what these gods are doing, what these aliens are doing. And they're coming here and say, I see what they're doing. They're creating these creatures. Why don't we move in? Like a gang, why don't we move in and take over and take this beautiful creation that these gods have created and mutate it into what we want. And so to mutate the whole human race away from their natural evolution of society and humanity into a whole new kind of civilization. And I think that that's probably what I'm here to do, is to call attention to the world that you're being misled by some extraordinarily powerful, occult, mystical, otherworld technology that is changing the evolution of the human race from what it was supposed to be in its creation, as opposed to where the dark powers of the world are now leading the human race into a different world. And what they have in mind for us, you don't want to know. The people who are in power today in this country and around the world have something in mind that you have no idea in the world how bad it's really going to be. Because there will be no longer any place for freedom, intellectual freedom, spiritual freedom, liberty, justice, none of that. It's gone.
Okay, so, but you are protected, and you've been told this over and over again, and this person that you met way back who sort of started you on your journey was also part of a race that has been visiting here and is looking over, out for you, in essence. And you've told, at least me, some personal stories in which you were protected, and there was reasons. You were told to leave a room at a certain opportune moment, and so on and so forth.
And I have had that happen to me over and over and over again.
Right. So that means there's a force
dangerous
for good.
things happening. And at the moment, I just did not know, walked out, and some terrible, dangerous thing happened. And I never even heard about it.
So this seems to be a force for good, some white hats behind the scene,
yes.
Some of whom have actually talked to you face to face, protected you. One that passed on recently comes to mind.
Right.
These people who might have been working behind the scenes, even in places that, you know, made them appear to be working for the dark side, if you will.
The establishment.
Yes.
But in point of fact, they were extremely powerful people at very high places.
Working for the light.
Working for the light.
Right.
And they told me, you know, we know what you're doing. And but one of them told me, you have some very powerful friends that you don't even know exist. And they're protecting you. I know. I have had the, I'm not going to get into the details, but I have actually witnessed protection from the highest sources in this country step into something that was very, very serious happening in relation to me. And all of a sudden, and I was really frightened because I knew the implications of what's happening, and it could be very serious for me. I may not be around much longer. I've heard from the top, and then all of a sudden I get a communication from Washington, D.C., from the highest office there, saying, don't worry about it, we took care of it. Just go on and don't worry about it. And I was amazed. From Washington, D.C., somebody that high up calls me and says, don't worry about it, just go on about your life, no one's going to bother you. And they didn't. And I've had this happen many, many times when something very serious threats against my life and against my work, I get a phone call, or someone will walk up to me in a public place and say, Jordan, that thing that you've been worried about for the last 2 weeks, yeah, we took care of it. Move on. Don't worry about it. And I thought, well, I mean, I'm still here. I'm still alive. So I know that I have been protected. I know that.
Absolutely.
Where would the truth movement be without you? Specifically, Zeitgeist is a movie that was in the top 5 most viewed on Google Video for like a year at least.
Yeah.
And I would like the Project Camelot viewers to be apprised of the situation in regards to your involvement with Zeitgeist, because it seems like management, as I call them, put you in a position in which the whole conspiracy theory movement wouldn't be anywhere near what it is now if it wasn't for your influence.
That, yes. Zeitgeist is a 2-hour movie made by a guy named Peter Joseph in New York. I didn't know anything about it, but Peter Joseph produced a 2-hour video, and the last that we heard, because on Zeitgeist was one of the first times Google pulled the counter off of something that's on Google Video. Usually would have a counter, how many people have seen this video. They pulled the counter, and they pulled it